Right, gang, welcome Calum Sharma. He is the manager of the BodyLab and someone who I know, like, and trust. Would you like to introduce yourself a little bit and what is the BodyLab and what do you guys do?
Yeah, so I'm Calum Sharma, head of exercise science at the BodyLab. We have 3 pillars: nutrition, performance, and recovery. Our mission is to amalgamate these 3 pillars to provide an optimal pathway for athletes, weekend warriors, and all of the in between to be able to create a pathway for themselves to optimize their health in the best way possible.
Awesome. So something that we always talk around is performance with a purpose. And I found out the BodyLab through a good friend, Jono, shout out to him, and came down here. And obviously we look at 2 key areas of optimal performance and peak performance. And what we're going to be doing is discussing those 2 realms and why they're so important, especially for the corporate athlete, those who I work with out in Singapore, or people who I have worked with in the UK. The corporate athlete is now hyper talked about through the whole of the high performance space, and throughout the modalities that they offer at the BodyLab, we'll go around and we'll talk a bit more around what they are, why they're important, and try and give you the broken down version of it so you guys can understand it. If you have any questions, you can let us know. The first part of the sort of the recovery series that the BodyLab offer, this is the float tank. Cal, just a little bit of an introduction of what this is and what it's used for.
Yeah, so as you said, it's a float tank, also known as a sensory deprivation tank. So we have 500 kilos of Epsom salts in here. The water and the air temperature when the lid is closed modulate to your skin temperature. So because of the Epsom salts, the fact that you're sealed into this pod, and the heat of the water and the air, all of your senses start to dull. You stop feeling because you're floating. Sure. And you don't really feel that you're in water because it is the same as your skin temperature. So, and it's completely dark, you can't hear anything. So this in itself, a society that we live in whereby we've got a phone in our pocket,
Too much.
The city, like the stimulus of lights, we're constantly in light all the time. Being able to be put in here and you shut that whole sympathetic drive of your nervous system off and you activate and upregulate your parasympathetic nervous system, which allows you to drop into better recovery states. And it also puts you into something called non-sleep deep rest, which allows you to eat into a light quota of sleep. So the light sleep that you go through in the evening, it takes a chunk of that out. So you spend less time in light sleep, which you need to spend time in order to enter deep and REM sleep. And you spend more time in deep and REM sleep during the night. So your sleep becomes a lot more restorative.
Awesome. So guys who don't know, the parasympathetic and sympathetic drive, this is basically a massive stress management tool, especially for those who are in high pressure environments. It doesn't matter if you're an athlete or you're working in the corporate sector. Your sympathetic drive is your fight or flight response to stress, and your parasympathetic is your rest or digest. We want to be in a parasympathetic state way more than we want. The sympathetic drive should be used for fight or flight, and it should be stopped when you're in the high pressure for deals, your boss is being annoying, or you're an athlete and you're overtraining. For you to actually get restorative exercise is imperative, but this is something that anyone could use for to drive those processes. And also, Carl mentioned about the Epsom salts. Epsom salts are high in magnesium. Obviously, from a transdermal perspective, you absorb magnesium better through your skin. So some of you who I work with, especially as fighters, you use Epsom salts to cut weight with. We're actually using this for a totally different process. We're using this actually for restorative, to drive that parasympathetic side of training and exercise towards that recovery modality. But the coolest bit, I didn't know about the temperature of your skin and how it actually brings down to your light sleep, because a lot of my clients have got terrible sleeping patterns. So this would obviously help with sleep hygiene all over, right?
Yeah, for sure. And if you think about what you were saying about the sympathetic drive, your stresses at work, your stress as an athlete, your stresses generally, previous to kind of pre-pandemic, we would have all these sympathetic drivers in our lives. And then we go into the gym and put ourselves into even more sympathetic drive.
Just drive it as hard as we can.
That was great. So what you do is, what you want to try and do, especially with these modalities and this one in particular, is you drive that parasympathetic nervous system, and then you come back and you go into sympathetic drive. And switching from parasympathetic to sympathetic increases the tone of your vagus nerve. You can lose vagal tone quite quickly because we just spend our whole time up here in sympathetic drive. But by switching between these nervous systems, it increases the tone of the vagus nerves. You upregulate, increase your HRV, which is super important, and you're able to really modulate stress in your life. And I think that's a big part of something that people are missing is being able to modulate that stress and really cut off and desensitize themselves to that sympathetic drive.
Sure. Again, those who are watching this around HRV, many will be wearing a Whoop. Many of you wear Garmin. You'll have the same things. Here he is, sponsored athlete. But it measures HRV is the beats in between your heartbeat, and obviously that's a huge stress marker. I know some of you guys are trying to gamifying this. This is a huge asset to have if you have the opportunity. Other ways that you can, obviously this is the perfect environment for this. If somebody was, another way you could be doing this is just having a really warm bath with Epsom salts. I know you can't sleep that way. You could just turn the lights off and tell your kid to shut up is another way of doing it. But that would be another way of doing it. If you haven't got the opportunity to come to the BodyLab, how would that be the best way possible to get that effect?
Yeah, I wouldn't suggest anyone to nap in their baths.
No,
but
good.
It is the whole understanding of being able to downregulate.
Yeah.
And we're not very good at doing that as a race at the moment because we have supercomputers in our pockets that allow us to touch it and we can do pretty much anything we want. So cutting that out, involving yourself more in these kind of things. One thing that you can do if you don't have a float tank, which I doubt most of you do, is get yourself out and involved in nature and leave your phone at home and stimulate yourself with things that you can look up to and be part of. Like I'm a big golfer, and I noticed when I started wearing my Whoop, my HRV on a Monday was so much higher than any other day in the week because I had spent 4 hours out in nature, switching off and downregulating completely. Nice. And it made such a difference.
Yeah. Not gonna lie, that would drive my sympathetic drive to the roof, boss. Doing golf for me, terrible. But nah, that's awesome. Wicked. We'll go through to the next modality that you've got here. Cool, legend. Right, gang. The next one we're going to be talking around is the hyperbaric chamber. Unfortunately, it's one of the most popular things at the BodyLab, so it's fully booked. But you'll see what it's all about in a minute. I'll let Cal explain what it's for, and we'll have a little bit of a talk to about it.
Yeah. So the hyperbaric chamber we use is by AirPod. It compresses to 1.3 atmospheres below sea level. So you're looking at about 3.5 meters below sea level. And it uses hydrogen and oxygen filtered through water that's pumped into the chamber while you're in there. So multiple benefits for this. You have the benefits of hyperbaric pressure. I'm not sure if you're aware of this guy in the States who just spent 100 days submerged in underwater to test the effects of hyperbaric pressure. So
wow,
that's the longest period of time that anyone has ever spent submerged.
That is committed.
Yeah. And he was about 20 feet down, and he spent 100 days down there to observe the effects of hyperbaric pressure on the body itself. He had scuba divers delivering him food.
Wow, Deliveroo with all mask on.
Yeah. So the hyperbaric pressure itself helped stem cell proliferation, collagen production, telomere lengthening. So all of these things that you put, it's kind of stresses on the side of hormesis, the term of like you have intermittent fasting, you have cold exposure, you have hyperbaric pressure, you have heat exposure, all these small stresses in the body that you can expose it to for a short period of time, say 5 minutes, 20 minutes, etc. Or intermittent fasting, which is a little bit longer, but it's not enough to cause damage to the body, but it's enough to cause good adaptation, and it's a good stressor. So hyperbaric pressure in that sense is really good for us in general.
So just so the viewers, we'll bring it back a step in relation to the problems that we see in current environments, especially in any high pressure endeavor, athletes and executives, the main guys we're talking to here. Again, we're talking about stress and things that happen throughout stress is oxidative damage. Yep. And guys and ladies who watch this, who followed my journey for endurance-based Iron men, Iron women, whatever we're talking around, it all increased oxidative or free radical expression in the body. That's actually counterintuitive, increases inflammation, and can actually have downregulated effects on hormones and et cetera, et cetera. So if we just go down that path of how does a hyperbaric chamber help with that and why, and people who will know, who may have heard of sleep apnea and people that are using masks when they sleep, that's obvious. This is like a version of that, but taken to the top line.
Yeah. So because of the pressure, it upregulates the amount of oxygen that you can intake and hold into your red blood cells. So the increase is about 30%, thereabouts. With the pieces that you just mentioned, so oxidative stress, things that build up on our bodies constantly, our circulatory system, our lymphatic system are constantly trying to clear those waste products. And with the help of oxygen, which is a replenishing molecule in our bodies, hugely, it can combine with things that are created from oxidative stress, such as hydrogen ions, combine with those and removal as water. So these things are really important, and upregulation of oxygen is just going to be such a helpful tool.
So when we're talking about the thing we're going to talk about in a minute, they've got an infrared downstairs. We're talking about increases in mitochondrial health, which is a really posh term for the energy powerhouses of your cell. Think of it this way: the more oxidative, more oxygen-rich your body is, the less disease you'll have, and the less negative connotations. This can actually have huge implications on your central nervous system, like we talked around parasympathetic and sympathetic drive. This can also help with simple things like, obviously, you're getting more blood around your body, which is more oxygen rich, getting rid of waste products. And athletes, if you're walking around and you've got DOMs, this can actually help. But more so, I assume at the BodyLab, this is mainly used not just for the physical, but also for sort of the mental game that your customers have who are in high pressure environments. This actually helps them stay in the game longer.
Yeah, for sure. Exactly. Switching off, sleep is very helpful for sleep too, because of the increased oxygen. At night, your body is constantly clearing waste products. If you can help upregulate that clearance, it removes your body's need to wake up and be sympathetically driven, because it can stay in that parasympathetic state.
Awesome. Right, next one, guys, we're going to go to the cryo chamber. We'll explain what that's all about. Next one we're going to talk about, gang, is the cryo chamber. Unfortunately, it's about to literally go for service, bad timing. But we'll just explain what that actually is, because a lot of you guys will be watching this will be getting involved with the Lumi ice baths and cold exposure, and everyone's getting a little bit lost in relation to why that's so important. So I'll let Cal explain what the cryo chamber is used for, and then we'll give you a little bit of a rundown about when you should be using cold exposure and when you shouldn't.
Yeah, cold exposure is probably one of the biggest pieces going on in longevity at the moment. We've got a guy called Wim Hof, who I'm sure you and everyone else has heard of. This crazy Dutch guy who does the most insane things with cold exposure and can sit in an ice bath for 90 minutes and not feel anything, which is just crazy. But in terms of benefits and why we do it here, especially at the BodyLab, is cold exposure causes, so when you go into the cold, it causes a huge amount of vasoconstriction. So it means your circulatory system constricts and diverts all of the blood to your internal organs to keep them warm and keep yourself alive. It's a fight or flight response. When you come out of the chamber, you come into a warmer environment and you go through vasodilation. So that is when everything expands and all the blood rushes back to the extremities and is pumped back around the body. So when it's closer to the abdomen and thorax, the body's nearer the lung, the blood's nearer the lungs, and it becomes a lot more oxygenated. And then when it's flushed back round, it can therefore replenish and rejuvenate a lot of the things that kind of, you know, as athletes and as trainers, we use our limbs a lot more and body parts and everything, and it is helpful for that. But at the same time, if you look at your vascular system as a muscle, which it is, like a bicep curl. So if you curl this way, you vasoconstrict, and if you go this way, you vasodilate for the bicep. If you work your vascular system constantly like that, like a muscle, it becomes stronger. So you become a lot more resilient in your vascular system. You reduce the incidence of heart attacks and strokes and all of these atherosclerosis and all of these kind of circulatory related diseases that are huge killers around the world. And that's just, you know, just through jumping in and jumping out, you know.
What's the temperature now? How cold does this go?
So these are two chambers. So this is -60. This is a pre-chamber. So you go in here for about 30 seconds before you get into the main chamber, just to get any excess moisture off, because when you get into here, it's -110 degrees.
Bit of a different ball game than you're jumping into your ice bath at home. But if we reverse engineer the reasons for cryotherapy or cold exposure, we've obviously got the health benefits, the regenerative benefits. One thing that people get mistaken with cold, they're doing it straight after a gym session. Now, from my understanding, from what I've read, obviously you reduce protein synthesis when you do that. So cold exposure is a recovery mechanism, but post-gym, it probably should be kept away from the gym session. Or would you say, how do you guys use it?
Yeah, in terms of gym, if your aim's to build muscle, you don't want to do this after your sessions. Because you, in more layman's terms, you have just trained in order for your body to become damaged, to break it down so it can build up again. If you jump into the cold, it tells your body that you want to recover and you want to go through
Basically protects yourself from dying at
Yeah.
minus 110, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
And then it's not really going to be in a state. You're
No.
sending your nervous system different signals.
Sure.
So you're saying, right, let's mash ourselves up and let's do this and we're ready to
Yeah.
go. And then you jump in here and it's completely different. So,
And also when you gym, you guys will understand in a minute, when you gym, you cause inflammation, whereas if you need inflammation for your body to regenerate.
Yeah.
So just in layman's terms, if you're wanting to do cold exposure, my advice would be either do it away from your training. I do mine in the morning just with a cold shower, or if you, especially athletes who would have the opportunity to have a cryo chamber, post competition, brilliant. Post time where you're not looking to adapt, you're just looking to recover, brilliant, but not looking to grow, not looking to harvest potential or to have that sort of performance-based element. Cryotherapy is definitely something that I've used for a long period of time, but obviously I don't have one of these in my house. So I wish it's something that we should all be thinking about, but not thinking about too much. And too many people are doing it for the gram at the moment and trying to find, cool, I can get the coolest video. Application, performance with a purpose, have a reason behind it. Next one we're going to do, we're going to go downstairs and we'll show you the gym. We'll also go through, they've got a wicked room which has got an infrared light and a watt bike and all this other cool stuff that you'll look banging. So we'll go through that. Next piece of the puzzle here, we're obviously in my favorite area, just because it's the gym. What's the main part of the gym and how does it all move in here and sort of what's the ambition?
Yeah, so when this was set up, you obviously have to look at economizing space and being able to use space as best as you can. We want our team to be able to create programs for multiple months and years with the same client and it be varied. So getting equipment in here that we can use in a multitude of ways, having a cable stack that is not just, it is a cable stack, but it has...
It's the cable stack.
The cable stack, but also it has fat grips, bars, two different kinds of ropes, different kinds of handles, different kinds of attachments, so that it creates a huge amount of variance in what we need to do. We also brought Kaiser in, who are a great brand, and it just, it can be used in so many different ways. And having Prime as part of it and Atlantis and, having this sled track through the middle and using a sled in so many different ways, it just allows us to be really creative with how we program.
Sure, and those who watch this who know, later you'll see the kit in here is what it's all about. They've got a Sorenex rack, they've got Watson dumbbells, they've got all the good pieces, but the reason it is the best equipment, but it's also going to give the best results. So I think that's something that I loved when I walked around here, was the finer details of why you've got kit. People who are into performance should know and understand that that's why it's so important, not just been thrown in willy-nilly. It's actually, you've got equipment that is, the machines move around the body properly rather than being in a fixed position where it's actually not, it's degenerative. And also the free weights and everything has been designed for peak performance, so to get results. Something very special that I've never used before is actually having infrared as a warm-up. Infrared is that it helps basically open up all your cells, open up all your sort of blood vessels and gets you lubed up, ready to warm. And the ambition is obviously get you warmer faster, gives you more expressions in strength. So we'll see how it all goes. Big shout out to Cal for taking us around the BodyLab. That was just part of what we're going to be doing of a future series in relation to all of those processes around recovery and high performance. In the next installment, I'll be talking to Cal around their coaching process, what actually built him as a coach, and actually something that I'm very passionate around is actually understanding his superpower as a coach to how to deliver an amazing service. So stay tuned.